My Lords, all supplementary questions have been asked, and we now move to the next question. And we come to the third question. Lord Ravensdale.
I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper, and in so doing make note that I am co-chair of the Midlands Engine APPG.
Baroness Barn.
My Lords, in March, the Government commissioned an independent review of the destination management organisations in England to look at these issues. The review is ongoing and will report later in the summer. It will make recommendations on how DMOs might best be structured and funded to support the post-COVID recovery of the tourism sector. Last year, the Government provided £2.3 million in financial support to England's DMOs so they could continue carrying out vital business support roles during the pandemic.
Lord Ravensdale.
I thank the Minister for that response. Local connections and knowledge of place are key for DMOs. Does the Minister agree on the importance of community-based action for DMOs and that freedom from hierarchical structures is key in helping them undertake their role effectively? For example, freedom from constraints inherent in local government structures and strengthening connections with LEPs, with town funds and future levelling up opportunities.
The Noble Lord will be aware that there are several different models of DMO, but the Government recognises the point the Noble Lord makes about the important role DMOs play currently in supporting local communities, sharing their expertise and building connections across destinations. The review will consider the points the Noble Lord raises, taking into account current examples of best practice and make recommendations based on that.
Ms Rawlings.
Lords, what support for the recovery of these organisations are the Government giving regarding the resulting instability of endless changing of the red, amber and green countries?
Well, the Government does recognise the and regrets the disruption to travellers, particularly those who had been planning trips to Portugal recently. But we have provided specifically £2.3 million in the last year to support the destination management organisations in recognition of their crucial role.
Wheatcroft.
My Lords, in this country we're very lucky to have so many museums and art galleries that are free to the public. And yet DMOs on occasion have included in the list of things they can do for visitors entry to the British Museum, etc. Would the Government, through the Noble Lady, the Minister, undertake not to support any organisations that market themselves this way?
Well, I'm very happy to take the points the Noble Lady raises back to colleagues in the Department.
My Lords, local authorities deserve praise for their work during the pandemic to promote staycations, getting people to fall back in love with the Great British Holiday, to either explore new places in our rich and varied country or revisit childhood destinations. Is the Government considering giving these hard-pressed councils and destination management organisations additional financial and other support, as we find ourselves in a time when the UK so desperately needs to grow domestic tourism and the hospitality industry is suffering?
Well, the Noble Lady will be aware that the Government has given huge support, over £25 billion, to the tourism, hospitality and leisure sectors, and very specifically has made an additional grant of £425 million to local authorities, and we were clear in that tourism and events were eligible for that funding, but obviously at the local authorities' discretion.
The survey of tourism businesses by the Tourism Alliance has highlighted some very severe staffing problems. Only 18% of businesses say in the tourism and hospitality sector say that they've got enough staff and almost a third have had to reduce their capacity, their services, or their hours because they simply can't get the staff. So what action is the government taking with DMOs in order to rectify this situation, which is basically wrecking the recovery, not just of the tourism industry, but also of local economies?
The noble lady makes a good point, and actually I would suggest that the picture is slightly more complicated than the one that she paints. She's absolutely right that there are areas of shortage, but also there are significant portions of the industry where staff are still on furlough, and there are great geographic variations, and we are working closely with the sector to assess how we can respond to the challenges they face.
Smith of Hindhead.
My Lords, could my noble friend the Minister tell the House how the Stronger Towns funding, the future of the high streets, the Levelling Up Fund, the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, the Welcome Back Fund and the Coastal Community Fund are being coordinated to provide a coherent strategy for tourism and specifically for seaside towns?
Well, can I thank my noble friend for highlighting the varied and sustained support that the government has been offering in the range of funds that he's cited, which have been available, some since 2019 and others yet to be launched. We are working across Whitehall and with local and regional stakeholders, including DMOs, to make sure that ongoing investment in places reflects their local priorities and local needs.
Of Cloncarty.
Lords, following on from Baroness Merrim's question, there is a question about how much the government appreciates the important role local authorities should be playing in the visitor economy. News of further job losses of visitor and museum staff, as for example the 50% losses currently threatened in Harrogate Borough Council, is in this respect hugely worrying. Local authorities need to be given the resources to do the job intended for them.
The government absolutely recognises the role that local authorities play, and they are important funders, as the Noble Earl is aware, of DMOs. And within the review, as I mentioned earlier, we will be looking at the right funding structure for these organisations going forward.
Lord Moylan.
My Lords, does my noble friend accept that regional transport authorities have an important role to play in welcoming and facilitating both national and international tourism? I'm thinking, for example, of the sorts of visitor welcome centres that Transport for London has habitually maintained at major London rail termini. And will she ensure or take steps to ensure that funding is directed at keeping these in operation?
The government recognises the role that regional transport authorities can play, as my noble friend has outlined, in providing information and assistance to visitors, and particularly when they coordinate that work with the DMOs. In terms of support for the sector, I already mentioned the figure of £25 billion that has been provided. This has absolutely been one of the worst hit sectors. I understand we've supported over 87% of businesses in this area.
Vesey of Didcot.
Government's support in that respect is very welcome. One of the themes of these questions is greater coordination between DMOs and greater coordination of funds. Could the Minister tell us whether the government is planning a big domestic marketing campaign, given that Matt Hancock has turned us into a captive audience for domestic tourism?
So we are currently working with Visit Britain, Visit England and local partners, including DMOs, to champion the diverse tourism offer that we have in this country through the Enjoy Summer Safely campaign. We spent £19 million on domestic marketing activity last year, and much more is planned for this year.
My Lords, given that many visitors wish to see international artists, how much does the noble lady think this question is bound up with Brexit, post-Brexit rules on touring and the difficulty of getting artists to this country and our artists to other countries?
Well, I think that the two issues obviously have a link, and particularly in relation to international tourism into this country, the range of events that we have traditionally offered has been very important, but obviously we are trying to balance that with the safety of citizens.
Honest Gardner of Parks.
My Lords, in their recent submission to the Independent Review of Destination Management Organisations, the Local Government Association proposed that local councils should be given the power to reinvest the money generated by tourism back into their local areas. Can the Minister comment on whether this recommendation will be supported by the Government, as local councils need to pay for the facilities to support such tourism?
I really wouldn't want to prejudge the findings of the review, and when we get those later this summer, we will then respond on a way forward.
My Lords, all